Hello, my name is Stephen Schaub, and I'm the leader of the Digital Revolution 2.0 here on YouTube. And today we're going to talk about pre-wetting film. But first, I'm going to pre-wet myself with some Heady Topper beer. Are they a sponsor? No. Do I wish they were a sponsor? Yes, I do. Back to the video. Pre-wetting your film. There's a lot of philosophies, a lot of people have different opinions on should they pre-wet, shouldn't they pre-wet. There's a lot of misinformation on there as to, is pre-wet a good idea? I think it is, but I do it differently depending on the film developer combination that I'm working with. So today I'm going to share with you how I pre-wet, my sort of philosophy behind it, and I think it works, so give it a shot. But once again, test and verify. You should always test everything that I tell you to make sure it fits your workflow and your working routine. So let's talk about processing film. Standard black and white development. Let's keep this really simple. Developer, stop, fix, clear, wash the hell out of it, hang it to dry. Standard development process. Pre-wet would be before all that. It's pre. So it'd be pre-wet, developer, stop, fix, clear, wash the hell out of it, dry your film. That's this different routine. It adds one extra step and it's at the very beginning. So why would you do it? Let's break this down a little bit and get into more what pre-wetting really is. First off though, I mix all of my chemicals across the board, whether it's black and white, C41, E6, always with distilled water. Always, just across the board. I want the cleanest, purest, most neutral pH water that I can get my hands on, and that is distilled water. Cuts out a lot of variability. Variability always exists within photography, so you're trying to eliminate it. Using distilled water, and processing your film is the easiest way to do that. So, what is a pre-wet? A pre-wet is just distilled water. So here's the way it works. If I've got 1,000 milliliters of developer mixed up for my stainless steel tank, I'm gonna have 1,000 milliliters of distilled water at the same temperature as that developer for my pre-wet. And this is one of the most important parts, and one of the most important reasons why to do a pre-wet is it allows you to bring the temperature of your film, the reels, and the tank as close as possible to the temperature of your developer. Let's think about this for a second. If it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit in your studio, that means that tank, that film, and that reels are 80 degrees temperature. They're the temperature of the ambient air. You got 68 degree developer over here. When those two mix, that's a huge temperature difference, and that's gonna cause issues in your development. So if you can get those two close or exactly the same, you're gonna have a more accurate, more consistent development. So I've got my pre-wet at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I dump it into the tank. I tap it a couple times. I invert it for 30 seconds, and then I let it sit. How long do I let it sit in the pre-wet? For a minimum of 1 minute and a maximum of 5, and 5 minutes is only for one specific type of process that I'll get into in a second. Normally I do 1 to 2 minutes. I don't like to do longer than that for a couple of reasons, but the most important one is that I find that anything longer than that for a standard development process starts to decrease the contrast and decrease the speed just a little tiny bit, and that annoys the shit out of me, so I don't do that. I try to keep it to exactly 1 to 2 minutes max, but I also don't go less than that. If you do 30 seconds, that's not gonna be enough. You gotta do at least a minute on the pre-wet to get consistent results. So 1 to 2 minutes, that should be about perfect. And by the way, adding a pre-wet that's only 1 to 2 minutes long will not in any way, shape, or form change your development time. If you're super happy with 9 minutes with D76 with some random film, this is not gonna change it. All it's gonna do is make your negatives look just a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more even development. Next thing the pre-wet does, in addition to bringing that temperature closer, is it washes off the overcoating on the film. So when you dump out the water, don't be surprised if it's a color. If it's Fomapan, it's gonna be kryptonite green. If it's D76, or not D76, if it's Tri-X, it's gonna be a little bit of a bluish tint to it. All overcoatings have a different color. Some don't have any color at all, but generally speaking, it'll have a little tint to it when you dump it. That's very normal. So what's happening is that the film is absorbing all of this water, all this distilled water at temp. So then when you dump it out and you dump in your developer, once again, the temperatures are now close, and by having the film already swollen with that water, the developer has to replace that water inside of the film. And so the process is slightly slower now because it's not dry film, it's wet film, and that makes sure that the developer's action with the film is a little smoother. Sometimes you'll see like developer streaks on film. The moment I went to doing a pre-wet, I never saw that again. Even development side to side, absolutely cleared everything up. So what are the different techniques that I use for pre-wet? A lot of it depends on the film developer combination, which is a post I just did a few days ago. If you didn't watch it, because this ties into that post. These are all building posts. So film developer combination matters. If I'm doing a standard process, D76 1-to-1, Xtol, D96, PMK, 510 Pyro, all of those to me get a 1 to 2 minute pre-wet across the board. Whether I'm doing it by hand in a stainless steel tank, whether I'm doing it in a plastic tank, or whether I'm doing it in a Jobo, they all get 1 to 2 minute pre-wet in all those environments, period. The only time I do a 5 minute pre-wet is for stand development and stand development only. So if I'm doing stand development, which is like Rodinal 1 to 100, Rodinal 1 to 200, super diluted version of DDX, Caffeinol CL, where the film's going to sit for anywhere between 45 minutes to a couple of hours with very little to no agitation, I do a 5 minute pre-wet. I find that doing anything less than that, even 3 minutes, I'd like 5. I get a really great, really clean negative every single time. But I don't do it for the other processes that I mentioned. So where is the confusion? Where did people sort of get off thinking that, pre-wet somehow wasn't necessary in modern films? Well, there is some truth to that. This is sort of an older way of approaching film. Older films from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, really had an advantage of using a pre-wet. It really did even it out. Modern films, and I'm thinking of films made by Ilford, have a pre-wet built into the film itself. So when you add the developer, it has its own wetting agent. Now, Ilford has gone as far as to say on their paperwork that doing a pre-wet might cause uneven development of your film. I don't believe in that. That's absolutely, in my experience, not the case. If you keep your pre-wet to 1 to 2 minutes, it's absolutely fine. So if Ilford films, I still do a 1 to 2 minute pre-wet, and I find that my negatives are even better than if I didn't do it before. These are subtleties. It's not like, one's amazingly better, but it's better. So I do the pre-wet. I ignore what Ilford's saying. I think they're wrong. Another place that the problem came up is that Jobo years ago put out a publication stating that all films should have a 5 minute pre-wet. And their logic behind this was a Jobo's continuous agitation, much like a uniroller base would be as well, and that by doing a 5 minute pre-wet, your times that you had for hand processing would be the same as your times in the Jobo. The problem with the 5 minute pre-wet in the standard development process is that it does decrease your contrast. It does lose you a little bit of speed, and I don't like that. So I don't do a 5 minute pre-wet ever. Jobo also went so far as to say that they did not recommend a pre-wet using Xtol Developer. I think that's 100% wrong as well. I do a pre-wet with Xtol Developer in my Jobo every single time, and it's perfect every single time. But once again, I'm limiting it to 1 to 2 minutes. So, to recap, I think you should do a pre-wet for every film you do. You should always do it with distilled water. The advantages of having all those temperatures the same is huge and cannot be overstated. The evenness of your development is huge. Only do a 5 minute pre-wet with stand development. That's it. Everything else is 1 to 2 minutes and you'll be perfect. I also do a pre-wet, just as a little info, with my C41 process and my E6 process, but I only do it for 1 minute. If I'm gonna do a pre-wet in a Jobo, I do all my color stuff in a Jobo. If I'm gonna do a pre-wet in the Jobo, it's for 1 minute and it's for color purposes only. And once again, I find that helps. Jobo in their literature says that by just rolling the drum through the water bath, that it's bringing everything up to temp. Well, that's a bunch of crap. It's bringing it up to temp, but it's not bringing it up to the right temp. The drum itself might be 100 degrees Fahrenheit for C41, but I guarantee you the rolls on the inside are not at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The only way you're gonna do that consistently is by adding a pre-wet of water into the tank for 1 minute for color. So thank you very much for listening. Please try this next time you run some film. Once again, test and verify everything that I say. But I think you'll find that you'll get a better development, a cleaner negative by just adding a very simple pre-wet to the very start of your processing of films. Have a nice day and go shoot some film.